Hey, welcome. Order the Ogden Valley Planning Commission meeting of April 13th, 11 a.m. in the Huntsville Town Hall Council Chambers. In attendance, we have Commissioner Morgan, myself, Commissioner Jean, Commissioner Zenger, and Commissioner Schaefer. I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moment of silence. Okay, thank you, and we welcome Commissioner Lloyd with us. We don't have minutes to approve, I don't believe, for this week, or did we? See minutes.
There's nothing.
No, let's get that agenda item. We have a large agenda today, and the intention is to get through as much of these items today and carry over what we don't tomorrow after the public hearing. Hopefully there'll be some time to do that. And the goal is to get as many of these through and move to public comments so that they could be posted for the April 28th public hearing. So that's what we're striving for and working through this to get to what we can. But again, what we can't do today, we'll carry over. So I might be shuffling the order of these a little bit based on kind of priorities and order of importance of looking more time, things like that. So first that I have on my list is, I think, then also which we can take off easier. So conditional uses, I think, is one that's in the administrative. If we could have Brian walk us through that ordinance, and then we can discuss our feedback and comments.
All right, I'm sorry, which one did we skip to?
If we could do conditional uses.
Conditional uses, yes, thank you.
And those are all found in the design standards.
Yeah. Yep, so this section, this section goes over how, or it defines what a conditional use is. It defines how landowners can apply for a conditional use permit, what considerations the planning commission must take into account when determining whether a conditional use permit is to be provided or not. It provides the appeals process. An important thing to remember with conditional use permits is, and I know you've received some training on this, but think of them as a permitted use, but with conditions that need to be met. Don't think of them as a unpermitted use that somebody has to jump through hoops to get. If it's going to be in the code, court decisions have heavily favored the property owners in conditional use permit disputes, and so the best legal consideration is, as has been mentioned, if you don't want it, don't put it down as a conditional use. But if you are going to allow it, you have to allow it with reasonable conditions. And so as we go over what those types of conditions can be, keep that in mind. That we are thinking more that this use will be permitted, but we can come up with a selection of reasonable conditions that must be met in order to mitigate potential negative impacts. But don't think of it as something like, well, we're just not going to allow it unless they can prove that they deserve it. Don't put it on that side of the coin, because if it goes to a dispute, the city will likely lose in court. So.
Did you see Shane's comment there?
Which one? Oh, yes, the very first one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So you can do that.
Yeah, that is true. You know, when we're looking at land uses, I would certainly encourage the commission, I'm sure Corbin would as well, minimize the number of conditional uses that you allow. Either permit them or don't permit them, but don't try to. There are some, you know, that are going to require some mitigation measures.
I haven't gone through this. I initially got that, but then there are things it's like, yeah, we want to allow this, for example, like a meat processing plant.
Yeah.
But it's like in theory, yes, we want that permitted, but you may want to make sure it's not having negative impacts on the conditions.
Yep.
So I think at first we tried to make everything permitted when we were just, we kind of had that ethos. But it almost takes away some of our power as far as being able to ensure that those permitted uses are implemented effectively. So I just want to share those.
Yeah, I think we have kept a few conditional
Yeah.
zones. Can Brian, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
This is Commissioner Zanger. So if there's something that we don't want, do we have to list it? Or is it assumed that if it's not listed, it's not permitted?
The assumption is, and the text in our zoning ordinances says if it is not a listed use, it is not a permitted use. However, particularly with businesses, the state legislature has been very lenient in how property owners can define a land use. If it is similar to one that is in your code, even if it is not specifically listed, state code requires that the city allow it.
Can you give me an example?
I don't know what was the one we used last week. Boy.
Okay, think of,
No, I'll think about it. Yeah, sorry. I'm nervous in front of the camera. I don't know. All of a sudden my mind goes blank there, but yeah, it's,
so it's like cousins of a permitted use would be like their cousin.
sure, yeah. But yeah, the state recently passed legislation a year or two ago that very specifically states that if a land use, particularly a commercial land use, is not listed as a permitted use, but is similar to a permitted use,
Okay.
then it must be allowed. And so the idea that it is only permitted if it's listed
Okay, I guess,
is ambiguous, but
Right.
But yeah, we try, you can't list everything. You just can't.
I know,
People are gonna come up with new stuff all the time, and that's great. We want innovation and we want creativity in our community. What we don't want is people looking for loopholes, but there's a fine balance between what you can realistically list and what you can leave off. So if there is something that you absolutely do not want, then list it as a non-permitted use.
okay.
Let's go around the table. Erin, do you have comments?
I do not have any specific comments on this.
Terry, you had some added to the notes. Scroll down here. You had,
Yeah, page 4.
do you want to expand upon?
Well, I'm just looking at it. I guess I was maybe responding to Lee Shishman's comment. And now I'm seeing Brian Pellegrini. Yeah, he was just asking if somebody applied for conditional use, if it could go before the public the same way. You know, if you change an ordinance would be. So you were getting public input. And I just said, how and should public review be inserted into the approval process?
That is another that's the use of a public hearing or the requirement for a public hearing when a conditional use permit is considered, has been a common practice with communities. Notifying immediate neighbors of a conditional use permit application has been a common activity. It's challenging because allowing neighbors the opportunity to comment and provide information that may lead to a better decision in terms of what types of conditions can be placed on the property, can be a good thing. However, you cannot let the clamor of public opposition overrule the ability to impose reasonable conditions. You know, if again, a conditional use is a permitted use with conditions.
Right.
You can't let people come in and say, well, we just don't want this, and then as a body decide, well, the neighbors don't want it, so we won't allow it. That's and we can't give people, we can't give people the perception that that is the power that they have as community members. A conditional use has to be very clearly incapable of meeting reasonable conditions before you can deny it. And you can't deny it simply because the neighbors don't want it. Now, again, providing them the opportunity to comment and provide input on what those conditions may be is not a bad idea, but it has to be balanced with.
Oh,
I think it's a good idea, and we can just understand amongst ourselves that we're
Yeah.
not gonna respond to public clamor, but I think residents do know kind of the detail and nitty gritty of their neighborhoods better than anyone. So
Sure.
I think, would this be a place to then input something about notification of neighbors within certain feet, or that
Yep.
there will be a public comment? I mean, I think that, let's go ahead and add that to this. We could.
well, I'm looking more at my comment too, and it just said, I said, could public concerns have been addressed when the original ordinance was presented for public comment? And can you use that as a reason to not maybe have additional public comment? Just throwing it out for discussion. Or should public review be decided on a case-by-case basis? Is that legal? Does that open a can of worms with any perceived affected neighbor or citizen demanding a public review?
Yeah, I would not do it on a case by case basis, even
Okay.
either do it for every instance or don't do it at all.
Okay,
Because case by case just becomes too arbitrary
okay,
in terms of how it's enforced. There are plenty of communities that do not provide opportunity for public comment on a conditional use permit. It's heard by the planning commission, and the planning commission sets the conditions, and that's the end of the story.
so if we decided as a commission to move forward the idea of public review, and you did it for everything, would you have to require that public review, or would you?
We're gonna require public noticing, and you could.
Yeah, so public noticing, but if nobody responds, then,
Yeah, if nobody responds, then then you have nothing to consider. But yeah, you would require that every conditional use permit be noticed with a public hearing, and
would that be conditional to who they were surrounding, like you said, within so many feet, or is it just everybody?
the hearing would be open to everybody. You may selectively notice only, immediate neighbors or properties within 300 feet or,
Okay,
something like that. But
okay,
But there's an awareness as to who those people are within that
Well,
range.
yeah, what would be a typical range?
typically it's within 100 feet. So it's generally neighbors and maybe the next neighbor
Okay.
outside.
300 feet, given our lot
I
size.
think
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
too big of a burden on the city administratively to do that.
Okay,
These are already public meetings that we put notices out that we have public meetings, and if people want to stay involved, they can do so, but to say that every conditional use has to be notified and have this whole formal public hearing, I think is opening the can of worms and a lot of extra work for our understaffed city.
I agree with that, maybe like right now, and maybe we get to a point. Into our city where we see that there maybe is a need.
Yeah.
There's been some conflict where, I don't know what it might be, and we could address it then.
So conditional use versus a rezone. Typically has. We'll get public feedback. Are we saying that for conditional use, we don't want public to be aware?
Well,
Or,
yeah, I mean, that's what we're talking about, I mean,
It's one thing to say the public is aware of everything we do in theory, because we put public notice that we're doing things.
right,
But to formally, like we've done for, like we have to do for all this ordinance, a formal public hearing. Where a notice has to be printed out and mailed out to certain people. And then if we're saying a geographic area, then someone's like literally gonna go to a map and say, is this property within the radius of this conditional use? Seems like really onerous.
Could we find a compromise and not require the noticing of specific properties, but do hold a public hearing?
yeah, how would you know that somebody had applied for conditional use?
Be paying attention to the public notices we put up for our planning.
For the agendas.
Okay,
The agendas, yeah.
I mean, if it's on the agenda, then people are notified. I mean, it's,
so your example of, let's say, a meat processing plant.
Yeah,
The next property over, I think they're gonna want to be aware if it's coming before the commission.
they would.
they would, yeah.
but it-
However, they're saying, at the end of the day, it still comes down to the commission making their decision and putting reasonable conditions on that.
Hmm.
So they would, if they're involved enough to be receiving notices of when we're meeting. They would know that their neighbor was wanting to make processing plants.
Yeah,
Um,
and obviously, I mean, there are conditional uses that are probably very benign and small, like that. And then there's other ones that might be more impactful on the community that they would want to know about, but when if we do everything, it's too much, and if we pick and choose, that opens up
Right, yeah.
problems.
would you feel comfortable though requiring a public hearing?
I mean, I think you could maybe say something that public hearings are at the discretion of the chair or vice chair, like that you could, but I think nothing
That
is
gets
sure
the
already.
discretionary piece though that we're trying to avoid, right, to your properties.
I'm just trying to think, the former planning commission, I remember them saying like, that the chair would often open it up to public comment if there was something going on, but it was an informal.
In
opening
your
up.
favor? Okay.
So if we were about to vote on conditional use and there's 50 people out here and this is the legal part, I don't know, but in the past, it seems like the planning commission could say, yeah, I'd like to hear if anyone wants to make a comment.
Well, it would be on, as part of the agenda,
Yeah.
it would be listed, but,
Alright. Meet back in fun.
yeah.
So if you were interested, you would come, just to
Yeah.
hear what was being said.
But then the question is, do you allow public comment versus, we're just gonna make a decision?
So for clarity, Angela, when you're saying public hearing, is that? Cause again, that's a notification.
Yeah,
We're getting into legal details here, and I'm not totally sure at what point it's yeah, we're gonna open it up for the crowd to say what they want versus we need to publicly notify that everyone has an opportunity to
Well,
comment.
it's notified, I mean, it's simple notification as we post our agendas now, that's
Right.
open for everyone, we don't have to do. I mean, we maybe tie it with another.
or,
So I think the question is, how do we allow public comment? Versus, like if we're ruling on a conditional use, you know, there will be people attending the meeting,
in theory.
but the question is, do we allow public comment or not? And how does that happen?
Can we put in the ordinance that instead of public hearing, the commission will consider public comment and just make that part of. I'm gonna get around that notification.
But that's, I mean, that's already a given, isn't it? I mean,
Not necessarily.
it's up to the chair or vice chair to call on the public, yes, no?
I mean,
That's.
currently, the chair has that power to open the floor to public comment at any time. Um. It could be added to the code just requiring that, in the case of a conditional use permit, that is no longer at the discretion of the chair, but the public comment period will be provided.
During that meeting, yeah.
Yeah, during, when it's, when it's considered.
Do you wanna
So-
get legal about that and see how?
Yeah.
that's-
Yeah, I would wanna run that by Corbin, just to make sure. My gut is telling me though, that we need to be as consistent meeting to meeting with the public's expectations as possible. And, if you're gonna do public comment, allow for public comment every meeting. If you're going to, require public comment for a conditional use permit, then might as well just notice it as a hearing. And,
So I'll go back to at least my short period of time. When the Ogden Valley Planning Commission was based in Ogden.
Right.
And so if somebody applied for a rezone, that was in the meeting notice, and it also stipulated that there would be public comment. And when you talk about clamor, I mean, that happens and it can get really nasty. But I'm thinking that pretty much every one of the applications that came before the commission, public was there, there was a lectern, and they were allowed to come up and speak. And, voice their concerns. So if we're talking about ordinances that we're reviewing now, putting out for public comment, and they get approved, I'm talking about once the moratorium is over, and people start applying for building permits for re-signing things like that. And I know Kay attended a lot of the meetings when they were in Ogden. So the question is, what's the process for letting people comment at the meetings? Is it in the meeting notice, the agenda?
it's in the agenda for the city council meetings. It's the first agenda item every meeting that, the mayor allows a brief period of time for public comment.
But the zone change is a different thing.
Yeah.
Conditional use, so certainly we would
Right.
require it
Yeah.
for.
But I think too, I'm looking at it as a citizen of the valley, not just the planning commission, and there may be, and like you say, things are changing in society, and there may be a time down the road, and I think we have to be long thinking that there might be something that comes up that the public really does need an opportunity to comments that we could have foreseen. So I would like to include something that allows some type of public comment if a conditional use is on the agenda. How's that?
Okay, I think, I don't wanna spend our hour on
Okay.
this item, so if we need to set it aside, we can set it aside, but are there other items that we wanna bring up as concerns or edits on this, before we can decide if someone has to put it aside?
Well, you had a comment
So I had a
too.
comment about, I think on page 4, there was a note added about allowing simplified plans. I think any conditional use should follow the same requirements. I don't know why we would set aside certain types of uses. And not require them to meet the conditions that all others are meeting.
Well, they're not, like, set of conditions that made them our meeting.
But I mean, in terms of the submittals, I don't understand why we would have certain uses exempt from the submittal requirements.
I wouldn't say they're exempt, but adding a simplified version for farms, saying something like a conditional use permit for agritourism, for example, if someone wants to do U-Pick. To not have to get a fancy site plan and do studies,
on track.
Somebody just deleted something that they shouldn't do. I'm sure it did that.
Where-
It was probably me, but I didn't know.
We're all in reviewing this.
Number 4.
I just deleted a bunch of your stuff.
That's one way to do it. Nancy.
Okay.
I didn't do it for 1 second.
All I did was click on something. I didn't hit delete or anything.
Nancy, that too.
Command or control.
Control for Windows, Command if you're out.
We can show most recent changes.
Add a comment. Don't know if I can.
Share documents,
I know,
So are
right?
you wanting to kind of move forward? You just sounded like going around the table.
yeah, so I just wanted to put any other comments on the table for discussion, and if we can get to an agreement, great, if not, I would like to put it aside so that we can accomplish some of these other approvals today.
I would like to put it aside just so Brian can maybe get legal.
Let's move that, and then in the meantime, someone can work with Kathy on restoring.
Kathy, can you restore
document.
this document from like 5 minutes ago?
Or the document.
108-4, conditional uses.
So I would like to move on to,
That means everybody has exit.
okay, was that, let's move on to outdoor lighting. It is
Right.
108-16.
From a staff perspective, I want to share some concerns. The Castle Valley example was very popular, but I'm concerned, first of all, I'd like to ask, has anybody actually been to Castle Valley? Okay,
No.
Angela, are you aware Castle Valley is a town of less than 200 people in population? Castle Valley is a very small, very isolated community. I'm not convinced that their dark sky ordinance is practicable in a community the size and established development intensity of Ogden Valley City.
Why? For enforcement
For
or?
enforcement, you are going to be knocking on every door in the city, asking people to change light bulbs.
Can I highlight the pieces of the Cassavant ordinance that I thought might be useful to that? So one was just, specific definitions regarding lighting that don't necessarily need to be along in our overarching zoning definitions, and so just more of an educational tool as people are reading the ordinance, what does this mean? And so I just copied in those that I thought might relate and be referenced in the ordinance, so that's in there in the comments. And then the others, were on page 3, and I tried to pare down and simplify to which would be applicable to Garden Valley. And so, and some of it's duplication, so you can kind of combine, but the fully shielded fixtures, I think we've discussed. And that they should be placed at an angle and height, all that's discussed, they shouldn't be visibly, the bulb shouldn't be visible off the property, that seems pretty straightforward. And then it talks about just placing the bulb under a heater canopy does not prevent direct illumination. And again, a lot of this is an educational tool as much as it is an ordinance, as people know what's expected. And then it talks about in ridge lines where buildings might be above the view area, that we shouldn't be looking at bulbs in that direction either. Which might be applicable across our valley, and then outdoor lighting, it doesn't have a specific, you must put in, only 5 lights, it just says provide for safety and functionality, so it is still a little bit of flexibility there. And then turned off when not in use at night, except for emergency exiting and pathway safety things.
Did you do specific times on that?
No, I think there is a time already in the ordinance about after 10 or something like that,
Okay.
part of it. The piece that that might be over the top in your mind might be about like specific lumens and that, but you guys can decide as a staff.
Well, and that's not, it's not uncommon to place limits on those types of things.
Okay.
I would like to.
The existing Weaver County ordinance
Do
had
we have, if we.
restrictions on
Okay,
lumens.
keep on, sorry.
The other one was indoor lighting shall not be constructed or used in such a fashion that it creates a direct illumination that falls outside the property boundaries. And then it has guidance on where outdoor lighting can be used for entrances, pathways, parking areas. It talks about, pools and those sorts of things, motion sensor lights. And that insect control devices that use light also have to comply. So I don't know if those are, if any of those are not applicable to the valley, I think we could consider, and that's all I've added from the Casa Valley ordinance.
So I have a question, Angela, on your timeframe here, November 15th to January 15th.
Timeframe. That's for holiday lighting.
Right, but some people will use white lights and leave them, they're almost like winter lights from, say, Thanksgiving to almost March 1st versus the colored lights.
That'd be prohibited because you see the bare bulbs during that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But
people that have the white lights in trees, they can't turn them on
I
after January.
would love that to
Outside of that time
be
frame.
prohibited.
Because especially, going on a little bit of a tangent, migratory birds, that's sort of respecting their patterns too, and it causes a lot of confusion. In the spring, so going beyond March with illumination, that could wreak havoc on that as well. Yes, Samantha.
So, the Christmas tree lights that are by, Magnus Cafe, those are there year round. So we're saying that would not be allowed
Where's that?
by the
Magnus.
Magnus Cafe.
Oh,
They have
yeah,
their
right.
white lights on those trees
It's in there.
year round.
Yeah,
But couldn't they just turn them off
At night,
Yeah, at night, that's the problem, is they don't turn them off. And there's property owners too that have their white light trees out on their properties that stay on all night.
Yeah, the issue of, there's the bistro lights and patio lights over at, by Saddleback and all of that, so. I don't know how I agree, we need to accommodate those sorts of enhancements on properties, but there's no reason to leave them on after business hours.
So do we need to address this specifically and say outdoor tree lighting? Easter lightings, the string lighting, that was really popular, you get a Costco a few years ago, they're bright.
Yeah, they're great, they're really nice ambiance.
Yeah, and fun, but I'm
What
wondering,
about the jellyfish lighting that people have installed on their homes that
yeah,
do all different colors, all different times of year? Easter, it's pink and purple.
I know.
4th of July, it's red, white, blue.
so we address each of those. Do we list them somehow? Do we have to list them somehow?
What are you trying to prevent? What's your goal in restricting
Dark sky
Decorative.
1 through 10.
what, so maybe you require that they turn it off?
At
Yeah,
a certain time.
yeah. So that I don't have to.
Because I think the jellyfish lights, the horse is out of the barn. I mean, you could impose a restriction or prohibition on them, but you're gonna spend months enforcing it.
Yeah, no,
And it's not going, I guarantee you're going to generate a lot of ill will
yeah,
against.
And I think the lights over by Mad Moose Cafe are inviting. Like, I think that's a nice aspect when you first,
Yeah.
whether you're arriving at 1 in the morning or 11 or 10 o'clock at night. It's nice to drive into that and it's welcoming. That's just my opinion.
But would it be necessary after business hours?
Well, I don't know, because then you get into crime and all those other things that occur when there isn't lighting.
Well, there's
If everything-
provisions for safety,
So,
it's lighting for safety.
but I don't know that those.
I think it's 6:30 AM to 10 PM restriction on some other things here.
Other accent, miscellaneous other
Yeah,
accent
I would
lights.
like to do that. I mean, I don't care if somebody wants to put lights up all on their house, but I do care if they leave those lights on all night.
Right.
And I have that in my neighborhood where people are leaving them on all night.
Guys, do you have thoughts about this?
we're in the weeds.
I know, but I have to, yeah, make a decision.
Is that weird? So I don't know that that's necessarily.
I think we need to address it, I agree,
I
because,
remember guys sent everyone an email about this ordinance in general and how it's very easy to just go in circles, we can talk about every little detail. But if we don't have a framework, either we just need to kind of accept it and then come back to it later, like pass it on to the city council and tweak this later, or we should go through this in a structural way. I propose that we confirm what the base structure that we want for this ordinance would be, and then identify where we create enforcement improvements, and then look at residential land considerations. But if we just pick everyone's little pet peeve, we're never anything done.
Do you wanna make a motion, if you just say?
Going to move through it a certain way, or is it?
Well, because I think just by putting that, maybe the specifics, we're still addressing the whole. Cause they all fit under that umbrella of timing. And maybe we address all of our little pet peeves with that one fell swoop, where we just limit,
well, there's a light curfew.
yeah, real life curfew.
Coming out by 10 p.m.
Yeah.
or within 1 hour after we close the business, it's already in our ordinance.
Mhm.
So it would be.
That's an agreeable plan.
Okay. So I would love to entertain a motion by Tyson.
I would like to motion to move chapter 108-16 outdoor lighting on for public comment review for submitting to the city council.
Commissioner Schaefer seconds that motion.
Discussion.
Are we adding anything?
Those are the, including the comments that we just made and added to the document.
As it stands, what's been added to the drafts.
We have
But have you been added into the draft? Is your stuff added into the draft?
we have a motion by Commissioner Lloyd and a second by Commissioner Schaefer,
Yes.
and all those in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously. Okay, we're done. I think we could move on to, let's get natural hazards. That's 108-22. Okay, Brian, whenever you're ready.
All right, this section defines a number of potential natural hazards within the community and then details which require additional study and support, such as geotechnical studies for properties near identified faults and surface ruptures, landslides, rock movement, liquefaction, flooding.
There seem to be just minor edits made to this that seem sensible and agreeable to me.
Yeah,
Let's go around the table with Commissioner Morgan.
We'll just, you know what, come back to me.
Okay.
Sorry.
Commissioner Lloyd,
I have no comments, I think it all looks good.
I think it looks acceptable as.
It looks fine to me.
Same.
Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion.
Commissioner Schaefer makes a motion to take chapter 108-22 natural hazard areas as is and forward to the city council for public comment.
I'll say.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Schaefer, second by Commissioner Morgan.
Yep. Commissioner Schaefer makes a motion to move 108-22 natural hazard areas forward for public comment.
And we got a second by Commissioner Morgan. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Let's jump into sensitive lands ordinance. So there's two documents in our files, and then this word that's labeled ordinance hillside overlay zone that many of us had I've been reviewing.
Some general land use feature.
Now, where's it?
So that one is design standards,
Okay,
and then the other
Is in the PC draft ordinance, it's.
thing that is,
which one do you wanna go to first?
let's go to sensitive lands. So that's under PC draft ordinance, that's sensitive lands, working copy chapter. Nobody click anything. And then we'll just review. And then Brian, if you'd like to skim through the comments on that.
My staff has been working on incorporating some of your suggestions from the previous weeks to include hillside and ridgeline developments into this overlay zone, just to create one overlay zone that applies to the entire valley, and then we'll map it out. So it will, lay across and show us which individual lots are affected by each particular sensitive land category.
So are we merging the hillside into this, so I understand?
Yes,
And that's not been done yet, correct?
correct.
Okay, so let's go through then any substantial changes that you've all made to the sensitive land base. And then we can switch gears and look at the hillside ridge line. Make sure we're on the same page on.
Yeah, and just for your information regarding the maps that begin on page 2, I did print out some large maps for Lisa. They might be over at the city office. I don't know where they've run off to, but none of the information in those maps has really changed since Weber County put them together several years ago, but we can clip them down so that they cover only the incorporated city boundaries.
Tyson, you added a comment about these are basically suggestions, not the recommendations, and not a basis to deny or delay conditional approval.
Which page are you
Page 1. Under purpose and intent.
on?
I mean, I think it's an ordinance, so it is to be. It is confined to properties to the requirements, isn't it?
It's been a while since I did this.
So we're doing sensitive plans, overlay zone. I don't see a minute from Tuesday.
It's
Yeah,
pasted
purpose,
in,
click on the purpose.
it's text pasted in on page 1 of purple.
Oh, I see it then.
So it was clear, so the sentence that was removed was this chapter describes mitigation methods that may either be required or recommended. And this sentence is trying to eliminate that ambiguity because that's legally. Oh, it's gone now. Someone just.
Who did that?
Oh,
Nope.
me.
See?
I think what's happening is gonna be clicking that X to get out of it, but it's rejecting the change. So undo.
Are you a map? There we go. Don't touch.
No touching.
It's very finicky on the reviewing process.
It's really not. It's just me.
Okay.
No, I did it earlier, and I was like, I don't know what I did.
So the first thing says it's either required or recommended, which is incredibly ambiguous. And
I agree.
so I went and said recommendations contained in this chapter are advisory to, I can see why that's too. But recommended to advisory only and shall not be used as a basis to deny, delay, or condition approval unless expressly adopted. So I believe the initial overlay standards they weren't straight up ordinances, it was more just the same other things that we want to look out for, and then people could choose whether or not to deny a project because they're like, oh, well, this kind of applies here or this doesn't. That's how it seemed.
And who would be doing that denial or approval? Us?
Us and or just finding like Brian's team.
Okay.
But I guess we could change it entirely if you guys so chose to say that we could take it all out. You just say this chapter describes mitigation methods that are required.
That are required.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How would that fly, Brian? Is there any issues with that?
Or else, I mean, it should be fine.
Kind of goes without saying.
Especially for for the hazards and for the stream corridors, wetlands, and shoreline, there are specific, guidelines put in place. For wildlife habitat areas, the language is much less,
That's nice.
strict.
Yeah.
Because, we haven't written, Weber County didn't, and we haven't written any specific restrictions on development within wildlife habitat areas. That can be kind of tricky because, everything's habitat,
So
right?
this perspective kind of stands that, because the language that follows will either recommend or require, right? So this is just a purposeful intent saying,
I think what Brian triggered my memory too, because ultimately, like, everything is habitat, right? So a nitpicky commission where someone could be like, yeah, we're not gonna allow that because, it's gonna affect the voles that are living in the field. And I guess the goal, what I want to accomplish here is to make it not ambiguous. And also to not allow impunitive, I believe is the word, punitive application of, like, someone's just says because it's maybe wildlife, but they don't have a solid basis for that claim to deny someone's application. So Brian, if we did remove all of this, would that affect any of that? Do you think if we just said we don't say that it's a recommendation or that it's required? I don't know. It still kind of seems.
I'm not sure it does because, reading through each individual, again, reading through the hazard areas for streams and corridors and wetlands, for example, it says that, the setbacks shall be observed. And, it does provide for some exceptions. In each of these cases, these regulations shall apply is the language that's been.
So let's just take some stuff out of that beginning paragraph. I mean, it sounds like maybe that's where the redundancy is.
I'm open to just deleting everything, including that sentence.
Yeah.
Like, I'll just do that.
I think it goes without saying if it's, the text follows itself. Okay, cool. I think otherwise this base chapter is fine with the
Did anybody else have
draft.
comments?
Do you have any
So-
comparing to what me?
I have no other comments.
When we reviewed this, the boundaries were still including things that are no longer in the incorporated
Still
city.
open that.
Did you take those out then?
Yeah, we were talking about that under scenic corridors, the ridge lines, we had things about, did like the Eagles Campground, South Fork Canyon.
And also,
I guess whoever makes the motion, if we do choose to, we should make sure, like, include something that Brian's team removed anything that's outside of the city boundaries. But was that your only thing?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll try it, yeah. Commissioner Lloyd would like to move chapter 104-28, sensitive lands. What do we have to do? He'll say, never mind, I'll stop.
All right, so let's jump over to the hillside and ridgeline ordinance draft. That will be combined and that will be found in just the general, let's see, no, that will be found in, is it design standards? At the bottom. And so, I have to refresh my file here. There's quite a bit of work done on this. Many people commented, which is great.
did you say it's under design standards?
Yes.
All the way at
Very
the bottom of the
small
page.
number associated, it's just those ordinance.
Oh, this is not the, no, this is the stuff that Corbin created, is that right?
There's a combination of Corbin, I merged your comments from another,
Okay.
Lisa, mine, Terry, yeah, everybody's, I just want to merge into this one document.
Okay.
So everything should be here. And so the list, the red items were additions. And changes from the one that Corbin had drafted. I think the main discussion point, the main thing that's gonna be new-ish, is what percent slope
Now, which
do we want to limit? And I think that's been updated like to 25%.
Right.
And then otherwise, you get all was basically, yeah, Corbin's draft there. How do people feel about that?
let me just,
Okay.
yeah, I think we had some good things.
There's a reference to height of 26 feet, don't we have 25 feet above?
What page are you seeing that on?
Page 5.
We did talk about those.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the 26, where that came from. That was according to Corbin's document.
I asked for 25. I just thought it was weird. 26 just says somewhere.
Yeah, let's just change it.
Well, and it says unless a lower height is required by the underlying zone. So if the zone is 25, it'd be 25.
Right.
Yeah, but why even quibble over 1 foot?
Because if it's a 30-foot height in the zone, then we bring it down to 26. I guess. I don't know, it's an arbitrary number. Yes.
Yeah, I don't.
But
25, 25 feet, 26 feet, it's generally considered 1 story. I don't know why one would say one over the other, but
Okay.
So then if someone were to make a motion, it would be taking the draft of this, combining it with the draft of the sensitive lands into one solid sensitive land ordinance.
Commissioner Lloyd would like to propose a motion that we combine hillside overlay zone as drafted by Corbin and created in this document, ordinance hillside overlay zone, along with the sensitive land overlay ordinance into one single ordinance. With the caveat that we have Brian's team ensure that the sensitive lands area ordinance does not include anything that's outside of the city boundaries.
Commissioner Morgan seconds that.
Okay, and, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Great, do we want to move on to subdivisions?
Yeah. Is that one sure?
That is outside, that's under general administration. 106, chapter 106.
Is it in a draft ordinance? Yeah.
Yep. Take it away, Brown.
yeah, I'm not sure if my staff was able to get all of their reviews done. By the end of the weekend, but I know we've been focusing on water and wastewater approval and proof of not just willingness to serve, but capacity to serve at the time of subdivision. So, where is this? Tyson's added the
So,
density formulas.
Do you feel like your team needs to, your staff needs to look at it more before we look at it?
Well, let me see if they've tinkered with it since Friday. If you don't want.
sorry, what was that? Do you feel you need?
I was gonna take a look at it.
I'm just skimming it to see if last week we did have a conversation about I guess not last week, but the week before, we talked about the difference between a full subdivision and a minor subdivision. Typically minor subdivisions of, depending on the community, they can be anywhere between less than 10 and, less than 5 lots. The intent is to reduce some of the regulatory steps to make it easier for an agricultural operator to subdivide property, or for a property owner to subdivide for just 1 or 2 additional lots for family or for individual sale. But
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
certainly the requirements that water be available, that they be a buildable, serviceable lot, stand, those are not waived.
Had a few comments, page 1, what's the calculation of developable acreage?
Yeah, we don't.
Let's see, I think Lisa had a comment.
Where are you?
Page 1.
Just a section.
Here, I think Lisa had a comment about.
Streams, equal wetlands, streams, protected water sources of wells, other items.
Open space, I had a question about the inclusion of open space there, because isn't that regulated through other means, it seems that we're facing cluster developments on open space reallocation. So therefore it is calculated in density, correct?
It looks like it was a comment, I mean, we're gonna put Derek added here, so essentially he added the wetland streams.
No, just required open space
Okay.
being excluded.
Shall exclude.
That depends, because if it's a cluster subdivision, for example, you are using that dedicated open space as part of the determination for how many units can be created in the buildable cluster.
Right, so do we need to say with the exception of something on that? Because I guess open space may be required for other reasons.
Yeah, I guess I'm not recalling any requirements for dedicated open space in any of our ordinances, aside from the cluster subdivision tool, which is not required.
Right. So should that be stricken from this line of?
Just take that one.
Yeah, I think that should be taken on.
Makes sense. You got it, Brian?
That's good.
Okay, and then, let's see, just a question on page 4 and 6, you guys are formulating the text about the water requirements, which I trust you'll do. And then page 10, maybe adding reference to the sensitive overlay zone specifically, it talks about hazards, but I don't see where we've added sensitive overlay zone. Which again, might be just inherent and given.
Maybe better to spell about them.
While we're mentioning hazards, we may as well mention it.
Page 6.
I think it was 10, that's what my notes said.
Yeah, it's page 10, number 6.
Location of existing well. So could we just add something that says and sensitive lands as outlined in the sensitive land? Or
Just to bundle all that together.
Yeah, it's, well, let's add an additional line.
One of that, I had a last comment.
I think, Angela, you've already gone through and removed all the references to the subdivision connectivity bonus.
Does that seem agreeable?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, so that's any, Erin, additional comments, Terry?
No, I don't have a comment, I just, if you can explain just a little bit what you just said.
The, getting rid of the density bonus.
For
Some clauses for transportation.
I think it was, if I understand correctly, if like you were subdividing a neighborhood and you made for a connectivity to another neighborhood or to another street, that there was a density bonus in the old code, is that
Right,
correct?
but we're just requiring connectivity.
And so now there's no bonus, there's no density bonus.
Okay.
Right, right.
Okay.
Um,
No, we don't.
Anything else?
yeah, I'll entertain a motion.
Commissioner Schaefer makes a motion to move. Chapter 106-1 subdivisions. To forward for public comment.
Michelle, wait seconds.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Who is the second?
I would say.
Lloyd.
Okay. Do we want to move to ADUs or Mr. Flynn overlay?
I just got confused on that. I was planning to make it longer, but earlier you said you want to get something done within an hour, or how long?
No, I think I'm at 12:30.
Okay, cool.
Pardon me?
We have to 12:30?
1:30,
We have to 1:30. Awesome.
anytime after this.
Okay.
We don't,
Yeah.
correct, we don't serve.
For a second.
So we, I thought that was a 1 o'clock meeting here.
2 o'clock.
A little bit of a break though for folks to eat.
Great, okay.
No, that's not
Let's
allowed.
then go ahead and talk about. We discussed. Yeah, let's talk about ADUs.
Oh, goody.
Okay, so that is. In our draft ordinance, design standards. 108-19.
Agree, shot action.
So. My big question here is this is gonna have to comply with the new state law. Because that goes into effect the 1st of October.
Yes,
And do we have that law?
I can read it to you.
We did? Oh, yeah, of course.
I mean, my understanding is the basis is. Any residential lot, 11,000 square feet or larger.
Yep.
We have to allow it, but we can put conditions on.
Like the size of
The
the
size, height, the setback.
I think it's actually all set out in the law, is it not?
Yeah.
It is already all
You
set.
you can set conditions on size, setbacks, height. Whether it is allowed as a short-term rental or not,
Ownership.
and ownership, you know.
Has your team looked at what we have here, is it compliant currently, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there are no problems in terms of compliance with this one so far. There is a line in the general plan that sets a goal to allow accessory dwelling units only when a transfer of development rights has occurred. So you're transferring a development right from another property onto the new, or onto the targeted property to allow the ADU. I'm not sure that's allowable under state law. We don't have that in our ordinances, but that's a goal in the general plan. But we're researching to see
I
whether
believe
the
state law
state code
takes
would
that
allow
out.
that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that it would be legal.
I thought we
Has the city council done something?
No, they haven't.
Okay, so maybe you guys could just tell them
Yeah.
Yeah, there's, if it's possible, that's great, but, yeah, I would think it would be a hurdle that. The state wouldn't allow.
that.
It would create, you know, if you are looking at ADUs as a tool to provide attainable and affordable housing, that would be an obstacle, requiring the acquisition of a new development unit from another property in order to build an ADU. That would make it much more expensive. But if you're looking at it as a tool to regulate density, and regulate overall building within the city, then that's it's possible if it's allowable, and I'm not sure if the state law allows it. Anyway, so.
Okay, let's start with Mr. Morgan, thoughts on this draft EV ordinance.
I don't see any issues, it's just pretty low. I'm good.
You're good, okay.
I'm good.
Does this, where we're at right now, does it talk about size and all of those
I
things?
said in the recommendation that I would like to present and talk about, when it comes around.
Okay,
It's in here.
then I don't have anything until we get to that.
So my only question was, is the requirement, like, I understand the requirement, if I wanna build an ADU, I have to be living in my property, as long as that doesn't prohibit me from, like, if I got a job transfer, that I would no longer like continuing to have to live in that property, right? Because I have an ADU,
Mhm.
I think people should be allowed to be transferred if they wanna keep their property here, they would be required to sell their property just because they put it in an ADU, right?
That's how it was, the original code required owner occupancy. I believe I added a change that took that away for that same reason, right? So someone, whatever, like you're.
Well, you're in the
80 years old,
military.
a rest home, and now you like can't have your ADU on your property, or people move.
That was my only concern, was that
So what
not,
was your
that it not
provision?
be, that it not be prohibitive to people that are forced basically to move for job requirements or taking care of a family member, short term, or something of that nature.
But do they maintain the house, like they keep the house, but they don't live in it?
Right,
So maybe he's
But it
living
could-
in it.
so, but it would be like, it should be allowed that be rented as a primary residence for someone.
Yeah.
Like not a short-term rental, not a
Yeah.
whatever, but it should be still a primary residence, like, I have a property in Layton. That still gets a tax break, because it is someone's primary residence, it's not a short-term rental, it's not being turned over every 90 days or whatever. So, it should still be allowed to be rented, should that person have to vacate their.
If they don't sell it, then they could rent it.
I think,
As long as it's very specific that it cannot be a short-term rental.
I think you commonly see that clause, I mean, it's pretty widespread that most ADU ordinances have an owner occupied clause, and I think it's complicated, as you say, right? I mean, I have clients that are trying to do this, and what if I don't live there yet? What if I do move there? All these things. And unfortunately, this is a case of enforcement. If things go wrong, it can be a tool to then enforce some of these
Right.
nuisances that come about, because philosophically, if you're an owner, if an owner lives on the property, the way you build it, the way you manage it, run it, is gonna be a good neighbor. If it's a good neighbor to you, it's gonna be a good neighbor to others. If it's not owner occupied, then it could be a business conglomerate, it could be somebody across the world that
Yeah,
buys up a bunch of single family.
which is what we're trying to avoid.
Ordinance doubles the density, and there's no local eyes on it, right? So I think that's the intent, and if it really, again, comes down to, if it's not a problem, you know, no one's gonna knock on a door and like, show me your tax bill and driver's license, right? But it is something that if problems do arise, then enforcement is possible, is my understanding. What do you think from a practical standpoint?
Okay. I'm fine.
You already done?
Okay, just review for me, what did you add to address that?
You edited the sentence
Find
that,
owner occupancy, I think
Tell me where you are, what page?
I got it.
Okay.
Don't touch.
Just say. Cause that was like a bit. And then it's your steering things.
Four.
Page 4.
Well, I prefer to keep over, I'm just seeing. No, two.
Yeah, on page 5, right in the middle. Verification, I added verification of ownership shall be required at the time of application. continued owner occupancy shall not be required provided the accessory dwelling unit remains in compliance with this chapter.
Yeah.
That's the part I didn't agree with.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Which part would you read?
Well, I don't, we just talked about continuing the owner occupied agreement requirement. But again, you might disagree, but, it allows for enforcement should issues arise and it
Explain that.
encourages good neighbors. Because if
Give a scenario.
somebody builds an ADU, their job is transferred, their family member has to move in, or they have to rent the primary residence. And it doesn't become a party house, it doesn't become parking lot for, whatever nuisance people would consider, right, a problem. If those things do happen and there's no oversight of that property owner, and it's affecting neighbors, then there's an enforcement tool of, no, you are not living on the property, therefore you can't continue this. Renting this ADU, right? It's a motivation for being a good neighbor. Right.
So you think that owner occupancy should be required?
I do, too.
That's-
I think that last sentence, it provides a loophole. I can see somebody, like you say, a corporation. And maybe it's not even that the house, I'm seeing it more a problem, let's say. I gotta get my thoughts going here. What is the provision when a house is sold? The ADU is just part of the property, right? It's not
Yes.
treated separately.
Nope.
So we're only talking about if you continue to own the property, but you are living somebody else, living somewhere else.
Right,
And you're
like
renting it out.
Right, like if I built a mother-in-law
Right,
house on my property,
right.
right? And she lived there, and then I had to move for whatever reason. And she stayed in that property, or rented it out to my kid, whatever, and they stayed, but I had to move. They would be able to continue to live there. But I think the provision that you said, where it says at the time of occupation. At the time of application, it has to be owner occupied, right?
Yes.
Because that's what kind of goes towards what Angela is saying, is that you don't want like. A big conglomerate coming in and buying 5 houses in your neighborhood and adding ADUs and renting them both out as separate entities and being a problem. So if you're the owner occupant, when you build your ADU. Then it shouldn't matter really what happens after that,
Yeah.
right?
Bring that.
I mean,
So Brian, consider a case where there's multifamily development. Could each of those units essentially build another density
yes,
on that property? So if you have,
Define multifamily.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, multifamily in my mind is attached units with possibly a commonly owned undeveloped space. No, they would not be allowed to
They
build
wouldn't be
accessory
defined.
dwelling units on it. It's a residential,
single family.
is it single family or no? It's
a residential lot of over 11,000 square feet.
which is less than half an
we
acre.
have residential lots.
That's about a quarter acre.
Or high density, right? So you could put,
No, I believe it's only applicable to single family.
so can we specify that then?
I
Well, there is a state specifying for us.
think,
It says here,
Does it say single family?
single family dwelling, purpose and intent, page 1.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they have to be incidental to a single family dwelling. They're not,
Okay.
you can't have an apartment complex with accessory dwellings.
Yeah.
Well.
Or even a duplex or a fourplex. You know,
All right, so, yeah, I get, yeah, I get where you're coming from because I hate ordinances that are. Goodness that people are gonna deviate, essentially, and.
I guess the thing that's coming, I'm just thinking out loud too, again, is when you read that first sentence, or I can't find it right now, but. Verification of ownership shall be required at the time of application. I get that, but does there need to be some sort of a time requirement that the owner lives in the house, or?
I don't know how you can require that though.
But the thing is,
That's
that's,
kind of infringing on someone's,
you're
Right.
verifying who owns it, not
Right.
whether they
Live.
occupy it.
Yeah,
But then it also says that once that condition is met, they don't have to, there's no verification that they still occupy the dwelling, the primary dwelling.
Mm-hmm.
So what if I sell my house, it has an ADU, right? The new owner occupies the residence and continues the rental to the people that are in the ADU.
yeah, you have to honor the lease that's in place when you buy a property.
so,
Because if
okay.
owner occupancy was required, then, and you're renting it out to some young family, then as soon as you sell, bye guys, you gotta go, because the ADU is no longer. Like, I no longer live there, or even if you still owned it, but you like moved
But
on.
then, the new owner, so
Yeah,
I mean, that's not,
I guess maybe the sell of gotcha, maybe you had to move away for your job, you can retain ownership of your house here in Oakland Valley. But not, if you did not live there, you'd have to kick those people out. If you require owner occupancy.
What are the problems with any issues, problems that we'd be creating by eliminating owner occupancy?
I mean, you could potentially end up with, landlords owning both units, and renting them out. That would be enforced through your business licensing, and if this, we've talked about the city maybe adopting a good landlord program that renters would have to be on good terms with, or members of, in order to receive a business license to rent property, but
Since this has been in place this way with the owner occupied requirement, could we proceed with caution now and evaluate it in a year, 6 months,
Yeah,
so you
fine.
tested it? It's harder to put the tiger back in the cage if we get rid of this and then later try to say, well, no, it's out of control now, we have to put this back on, right?
I wanna keep the owner occupancy. I just think eliminating it, yeah, I just think eliminating it, you open up possibility of what we're trying to not have up here, and that is corporations coming in and buying houses. I would rather leave the available inventory to people who wanna come up here, be full-time residences. And the ADU is allowing them to do that. That's what I'm seeing in my mind for ADUs. I'm not seeing ADUs as a tool for corporations to come in here and create more rental properties. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
It does make sense. I just think that it will have, if people were following the letter of the law, it will from time to time have negative implications. For particularly people renting those ADUs, as the landlord, the owner of the ADU in the house needs to move, then suddenly that ADU is no longer. And they will have to operate, they'll either have to obey the law and not have to leave, or they would need to do so illegally.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the worst, that's what
Which I think most people would.
Which is, that's
do. You know, I don't know.
I think it'd be great to make a decision and then survey the progress after a period of time and get real time.
I'm fine to renew it and we can move forward. I don't know if you guys.
it's a tough situation. You have unintended consequences either way.
Yeah,
You're either facilitating additional absentee landlords, or you are putting property owners who wish to relocate in a situation of having to either evict renters or sell the property.
which I'm not sure they can actually do, to be honest. I mean, if you're gonna, like, that's gonna be a whole legal issue. If you're moving and you don't wanna sell your home and you have a lease in place. And you're saying, you can't live here anymore because I don't live here anymore, that's gonna create
Cause
a
that big,
major legal problem if the landlord is breaking or terminating the
Right,
lease or
right.
for people.
Is this new law coming forward to address that? No. I vote to move forward, keeping owner occupied in place, and I agree with Angela, if we need to. Because I think ADUs are a new little beast that we're just gonna have to deal with as it comes to Valley. Then we could address it again, if we're seeing a need to tweak it.
You know, I agree. And I'm going back to, let's say you sell your place, you're not transferring, right? That, and the new owner then agrees to honor the lease with the ADU. That's not a problem.
If that arrangement was made.
Right, but let's say I transferred and I didn't sell my property and I was renting that ADU. I'm no longer occupying the property. Maybe I rent out my main property to a new family because I'm not gonna be there, right? So now you're saying that in order for those people to stay in that ADU, I have to live in that property. So you're forcing me to sell my property
Or still own the property. When you say owner occupied,
No, it means that the owner of the property must live in either they.
Right. But if she transfers and she still owns the property,
I'm not
but
occupying
she's
it.
not occupied. That doesn't invalidate the lease.
Doesn't invalidate the lease, it just makes it non-compliant.
Yeah, it's a non-compliant. But I'm wondering too, if the incidences of this scenario are gonna be minor compared to owner occupied property.
So Angela, you kind of wanted to move this on.
Let me just skim through what I was recommending as far as the design requirements, if I could, and then we can talk through those. And these are due on page 3, and I just added a comment to the standards and requirements. So I'm recommending EDUs shall not exceed 1,000 square feet, but an exception later somewhere else.
For ADA compliance.
For ADA compliance, we have a
Okay.
1,200 square foot maximum.
Mm-hmm.
Benefit there. And let's see, so just following the state law that we're allowing them on 11,000 square feet, we're not going smaller lots, and then 20-foot height, 5-foot setbacks, and location in the rear yard, unless otherwise approved, if there's some special condition, I guess. And then one thing I've seen also are window placement, so that you don't have windows looking into neighbor's yards. Sometimes there's setbacks or requirements for frosted for privacy. So they're not viewing theirs, and then minimum of 1 off-street parking space per ADU. And the utility connections be sub-metered, but those have to be separated. And that's all.
So if I had a line of 20 feet instead of 25, or somebody wants to put one on top of the garage.
Popular detached, like accessory dwelling unit is a garage house or a carriage house,
Right.
where the dwelling unit is on top of a.
But that would be an existing
Parking.
building, wouldn't it?
Not
No,
necessarily.
you could build it from the ground up,
Okay.
right? But that would be taller than 20
Good
feet.
feet.
Right.
I'm fine with that.
So how do you address that though?
Well, just.
You also under the line that says for a lot that has 20,000 square feet or less, which at this point, I think we can just remove. Language.
But we don't want.
Well, no, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that because you still have lots in like residential estates,
Yeah.
subdivisions. It says here that the detached accessory dwelling shall be no greater than 90% of the height of the single family home. What if the single family home is around 35 feet tall? Now you can have a
Yeah, I'm not getting rid of that clause, I don't know where that.
28, 27 foot tall. Well, I guess that's still only one story.
So,
I feel like my house is more than 25 feet. I have 18-foot ceilings in my living room.
What did you say actually, like to do?
And then you add the roof and
There was
rafters,
20
and
inches.
that's pretty
No,
normal here.
But then does that still have the same problem with the carriage house thing we were just talking about?
25 feet's good size,
That's just.
for a two-story.
Didn't you say 20?
25 is one story.
25 feet is one story. Cause you're going from the ground to the top of the roof. Like my living room has 18-foot ceilings. I guarantee you that my house is more than 25 feet tall. 100%.
but also Brian said, even if you go to 30 feet, it's still one story.
Why is it still one story?
Cause most people have 10-foot ceilings now. And some 12.
Right? 30 feet height is not gonna give you a two-story home.
Well, 30 feet would give you a two-story.
Two-story ADUs and 20 feet.
Yeah. Wow, so.
You have? How have you done that? Basement?
No. I mean, it's tricky because you
I
told
mean, if you're not doing vaulted ceilings, if you've got a 10-foot ceiling,
25.
you could do a 2-foot, you could do a two-story building in 20-foot feet, you know?
Angela, your comment about it contain a minimum of 300 square feet of habitable space. 300 feet.
I mean, it's to be, I'm not stuck on minimums if we wanna remove that. Not sure what would be livable, less than that.
Right, within 300 square feet, what would that contain?
You could do a studio.
Studio apartment.
Yeah.
Above
Tiny house.
a tiny home.
Yeah. Be fine.
He shed.
Okay,
Where do I have that? Where are you?
it's, that was on page 3.
That's.
It's under standard,
Accessory dwelling, shall be minimum 300 habitable square feet. Um,
I don't think
do you
I
want it
have.
smaller than that, or are you just saying there shouldn't be a minimum?
no, I'm just curious. What?
Yeah, I didn't add that, so I don't know if I.
Okay,
Do you want there to be?
no, I was just curious, what, 300 square feet, what did you have, kitchen?
Maybe like a tiny house.
Yeah,
Really small.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't. Then that I mean, in the code states what a dwelling unit, I added a definition of dwelling unit, so that was one of the questions in here. So it has to have, specific sanitary kitchens, things like that anyway, so by code, so I don't know that the square footage will dictate what's livable.
How do you guys feel about Angela taking the square feet maximum from of the footprint from 1,000 square feet to 2,000, or from 2,000 to 1,000?
I'm good with that smaller.
Okay, couple bedrooms and spacious living. 1,000.
I think. The intent is to not build a
Whole separate
totally
house.
another second home. Right? It really is more to maintain that mother-in-law apartment and kind of. Look and feel.
Starter, yeah, there's a few starter for families and singles and elderly to, accessible spaces, so.
I feel like we should. I think the building height should go back to 35 personally, just because again, for people building over garages or something like that. Think about the types of people that might be staying here would be young families. Or elderly people, and so if it's elderly people, when we minimize the square footage on the ground, the footprint size, then you're gonna have to fit more like ADU, not ADU, ADA, compliant spaces, like so bathrooms might have to be bigger, what have you. But. So yeah, essentially, if we're minimizing the footprint, I feel like we shouldn't.
So a nuance of that could be incorporated is. A base height and setback 5 feet at 25 feet, and then you get a increase in height the further away from the side and rear to go, because for Nate, so it's saying. If you have a little house in the backyard, you don't want this thing towering over you at, roughly your property line, so.
Yeah.
We allow for height increase, it has to be incrementally
I
further.
like that idea.
But even if you increase height. According to setback. The impact of a neighbor could still be really great. You know, just because it might not be as impactful to the homeowner, it might be to a neighbor if you keep increasing height.
Well, we still cap it at some reasonable amount, right? So
Okay.
whether if it's 35 feet, then we say, what is our starting height at 5 feet, is it 20 feet, 25? And then.
Yeah,
every
it's not
foot,
that
every foot you go away, you get a foot in height, is a common strategy. So if you wanted to go 35 feet, we need to move it an additional 10 feet away from the property line. Things like that.
I like that. What's the current setback here? Just move around things.
So this is setback from property line.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's. Is it standard? The setbacks?
Your thoughts on that, Brian?
Yeah, that's a common way to address height, you create an envelope where distance from, if you're allowed a 1-story accessory dwelling unit between 5 feet to 20 feet from the property line, and then if you're willing to do a greater setback, then you're allowed a higher, an additional level.
So Angela, what do you think would be a good minimum height?
I guess we could start at 25 and then increments of a foot for the further per foot we move away from the setback.
But then
Up to 35 feet.
okay, up to 35 feet, but as you're doing that setback, is there any kind of a minimum for its location to, adjacent to the primary home? Or do we not care?
No, in some ways it might be better than a yard because, you're outside in shadows and views and, heated, things like
I
that.
have another question. If you did a 25 foot, what kind of a roof pitch can you get on a 25 foot?
Well, I guess that's something to designate, we're not
Depends on how wide it is.
pitched. Should we set a standard of pitched roof is X and flat roof is X?
I don't think you can have flat roofs up here, can you? Or-
Snow.
So we can,
If you put I-beams in your ceiling, I guess you could.
quote your pattern on flat roof something.
Yeah, no, thanks.
And there's also wall height, right? So top of roof for building height is different than wall height. So we could say building height at 25 feet, wall height at 20 feet, or something.
We don't go into that level of detail on any of our other
Yeah, okay.
design standards.
Okay, so what's the general feeling about basing the base height at 25 feet, add a 5-foot setback with increments of a foot in height per distance?
I'm good with that.
Setback.
I'm good with that. I'm a little confused by the part you just added though.
That's just the basic setback from the
Okay.
property line.
So I wrote this here consigulated, so it can be increased up to 35 feet in increments of 1 foot for increments of 1 foot in height for every 1 foot additional setback from property line minimum setback.
That's what we talked
Up
about.
to.
Yeah, so that's what,
Is 5 feet from a property line, is that typical? It seems super squishy to me.
Mine's 10 in my neighborhood.
Depends on the type of building. Typically, homes are 20 feet from a property line, but accessory dwelling units
5 feet's pretty
typically get
normal.
treated a little differently. I mean,
We could increase that, but
Yeah,
I would go less than that, but.
no, I go more than that. I'm just trying to think of neighbors. I think 5 is feeling a little bit encroaching
see.
on a neighbor.
So,
What do you think?
I think 5 feet is fine.
You do?
Yep.
Unless,
I mean, someone could put a shop or whatever right next to your. It's 5 feet from the
I
property.
mean, yeah, accessory buildings like a shop or a shed or,
they can be.
you know, they can be anywhere between 5 and 1 feet off of the property line,
Okay,
but for a living unit, there are privacy concerns, so there are places that do greater setbacks, but a 5 foot setback is not uncommon even for an accessory dwelling.
okay, I would prefer 10, but. I guess the property owner, just because 5 is stated, they could say, that's not gonna work. I was thinking, I think that's what I'm feeling a little bit more. I guess they could determine that on their own.
Okay, so that, any other, I've added and things for clarification on what I was trying to say? Um, any other?
No.
You did wrong to come in.
Moving on, make a motion.
I will. Commissioner Lloyd. Motion is that we move chapter 108-19 accessory dwelling unit on for public comment. And proposed by pass on the city council on paper.
Commissioner Schaefer seconds.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Lloyd, second by Commissioner Shaper, any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Let's then go to, do you want to do cluster subdivision release?
Sure.
And that is.
108-3.
When you are.
The word.
Brandon, working up on that.
All right, yep. Okay, so cluster subdivisions have historically been allowed in just about all the zones, all the residential zones. The F40 and F5, AB3, FE3, and the new hillside residential. The intent is to allow for development of property while reducing infrastructure needs by reducing the footprint of the actually built portion of the property and to maintain connectivity and contiguity. That's not even a word. Contiguous. Can maintain contiguous open space across, you know, a large area of land. For example, taking a 9-acre parcel where you could have 3 homes instead of having three 3-acre lots with the home smack dab in the middle of each of them and 1,000 feet of road and water pipe in between each home. You've got the homes clustered into smaller, perhaps half-acre individual lots with a larger remainder collective open space. In the ordinance, the intent was to include that remainder open space in a conservation easement. Well. Well, perhaps not a perpetual conservation easement, but the intent, the open space could be maintained by a homeowners association or
We have deed.
deeded to a particular entity. I believe in some cases, the open space has had a conservation easement placed on it, which, prevents additional development in perpetuity on that remainder open space. But the open space, under ordinance, the open space, that remainder can be used for a variety of purposes, including agriculture, animal pasturing, recreation, or other undeveloped, unbuilt activities. Somebody. So we did have so Tyson did put in, require that, permanent protection in the form of a conservation easement or deed restriction, or other development restriction contained within the code's covenants and regulations for the homeowners association.
Where are you looking, Brian?
So I'm on page 12, the bottom of page 12 right now.
Okay.
So we do all.
I love that.
Some of you guys tearing out the word.
And should we jump in with comments then?
Absolutely.
Okay,
I have one question.
yes.
So cluster subdivision, tell me how that relates to the village centers, or
It doesn't.
it doesn't, okay, I'm good.
And a few comments, pages 9 and 15, there's reference to. Sorry. Reference to densities. Okay, yeah, these. When any of these is offered as a community amenity on an open space parcel with public access and a blanket public access easement, the subdivision shall receive 25% of the acreage credited to the net developable acreage for purpose of populated density. I know that.
So what it does is, for example, if you have 100 acres, but 10 of it is covered with wetland, instead of, the developer could come in and fill in the wetland, assuming they meet Army Corps of Engineer requirements. And then they would have, instead of 90 acres of buildable land, they'd have 100 acres of buildable land. This would give them, if they chose to preserve that wetland as a part of the dedicated open space as an amenity, for wildlife habitat, possible recreation space, they would still be able to receive a credit for 25% of the land that they were conserving. So they may not be able to build 100 acres, but instead of telling them that they can only build 90, it allows them to build 92. Or it gives them a density credit for 92 buildable acres instead of 90. buildable
But are
areas.
these areas already off limits per the sensitive land ordinance?
Not necessarily off limits, but there are certain restrictions on them, you know, but if this were to leave them wholly untouched. It would offer a small
Well, it's-
incentive.
It's not really rating the density though, right? I mean, it's really,
It's still less than the total overall buildable or developable density of the parcel. It gives them it gives them a little bit back
for essentially,
if they
Protecting
choose to
trees.
protect a certain amount.
yeah.
That they're not already required to have it.
Right.
So is it clear that those are separate? It's not based on required protections? Volunteer.
What would be an instance though where it's not required? What would they be protecting that wasn't required?
Well, I think federal designation of wetlands is changed or changing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So,
I mean, they would still be required to meet all setbacks as defined by our sensitive land code, but there are, you know, maybe instead of piping a stream bed, you know, they choose to leave it open. Or
so maybe just add that, when not required for sensitive land.
Right.
Okay, I like that.
And then the other one was page 15, again regarding density. Just striking that, see. Because, well, it says Ogden Valley planning area bonus in a cluster subdivision shall create no new density entitlements in the Ogden Valley. I think we keep that, I'm not sure. 15.
Oh, I'm kind of green.
And it mostly talks about Western Weaver, so that obviously goes away, and then there's just the one line that was stricken but shouldn't be stricken.
So on that page, are we okay with the building dwelling height and the accessory building height? Is that consistent with what we just talked about?
The table. On
The,
that same page on 15.
on page 15, that table, for dwelling, it's 35 feet, and then accessory building is 30 feet.
I'm with you, Angela, I'm trying to keep that last sentence taken.
Well, did you delete it? I think you deleted it, yes, I'm not, I put it back.
I really.
I still got it there.
No, Alex Jones deleted it, so is that your staff, Brian? Alex
You do
Jones.
reach check.
Alex is, you
On
know,
the top of page 6. Oh, there we go, okay, but delete. Yeah. So all the Western Weaver goes, but keep the Ogden Valley planning area.
so delete everything above the.
Yeah. Um. And then we talked about,
Well, if there is no density entitlement, then why don't we just strike the whole 108(3)?
That's fine.
I'm not sure where the discussion of roads for density was. I just want to make sure that's stricken.
Where you at now?
Right, so there was something in here about density bonuses. If providing connectivity.
Oh, yeah, I said that too.
I'm sure that wasn't just one off the regular subdivision.
To like both.
It's higher.
I see. Page 4. On Valley planning various streets. Notice this content will show the component.
There is a, okay.
Let's just make sure we search for it and see if we can see.
Okay, so yeah, I think if it's not there, then good. Did you have a comments, Terry?
No.
There is?
Well, I did on page 4, I wanted to start street lighting because we don't have street lighting up there. Do we? Not really.
There are some areas that have street lighting, I do believe.
Within like a subdivision, you mean?
I don't know. Would that be under the lighting ordinance?
It's on page 4.
See your comment, let's see what it says.
Well, it could have been taken out. No. No, operation and maintenance of street lighting. And any right of way vegetation shall be the responsibility of the homeowners. What street lighting? am I talking about?
Well, if there is no street lighting, then it's just a matter.
Yeah, but there might be in the future, I guess.
Yeah.
And then are we still standing or are you ready for?
I'm still standing.
Okay, should we put this one aside or do we wanna? Okay, let's get a motion.
Do we have any exceptions or just as is?
For draft.
Let me get to, so I have the right one. This is 108-3.
Yes.
I, Commissioner Morgan, propose that we move chapter 108-3 cluster subdivisions forward for public comment.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Morgan, second by Commissioner Lloyd, any discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Let's move on to master plan development overlay zone. I made some just, county to city things on this.
Please show me when the bid is.
Oh, it is under draft ordinances, 104-27.
Brian, can you give us just a quick overview of what this is? For this,
So this describes. So the county used to have a planned residential unit overlay zone, and it was renamed to this master planned development, but the intent was just to create a visual overlay on the map to show where developments had entered into a master development agreement.
It's like a hatch on.
Right, that's the hatch mark on the zoning map. And then
it's still in the air on that.
it's more of a visual aid and just an official declaration from the city's standpoint that these are neighborhoods that have a master development agreement that is going to differ somewhat from the zoning requirements, regardless of what zone it's in.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, what building is this in?
This is in the planning commission. Yeah,
Here's the new like the main.
Yeah, it's in the main.
It's in the main
Emergency.
PC ordinance.
One's the newer.
Oh, okay, thank you.
oops. Okay, I pushed the wrong button. Yeah, it's in PC draft ordinances in its own folder called master plan development overlay.
Oh, definitely.
Applicability, it lists different zones, it says commercial valley resort. Should it also say commercial limit, I mean, should it just cover in any zone? Be applied to any of our zones, does it need to be broken out like that? Or do we want to limit which zones?
I mean, wherever the city wants to allow master development units. If you,
I would think any, we should consider it anywhere.
See, my gut is to eliminate it.
Eliminate master plan.
Developments. I feel like if you look at the plan right now, our city map. We're pretty dense in master developments.
that's the intent of a master plan development is to allow flexibility in the density.
So it tends to, they tend to increase in density. Am I reading that wrong?
No,
Yeah. And I think if we want to more effectively control the growth in the valley, I'm more than happy to honor all of the master development communities that are in existence, that are approved, you know, Kobe Branch, all of that that's moving forward. And I just feel like if all of those, when they get finally built out, I think they're gonna accommodate what we want to accommodate.
So what do you say about though that if we're the concept of shifting densities from, you know, areas you want to keep open space or agriculture to higher density areas through tools such as TDRs or whatever method is developed? Something like this might give us the flexibility and say, no, we actually want to put the density here instead of having it scattered
Right.
around about. So we have to have some mechanisms for moving densities someplace.
Okay, so then I guess I'm misunderstanding that. I thought as that the general consensus with it was that TDRs were.
They don't exist now, but they probably will be a TDR program. There hasn't been an effective TDR program that isn't in the future. So that it still could be a tool.
Well, there has been an active TDR program now, and it's been abused.
It's just been owner created, right? So
Yeah, it's been abused,
But
so.
we're gonna do better than that. We're gonna create a really effective TDR ordinance, I hope. That then allows us the flexibility to say, here's where we wanna preserve open space, preserve admin. And give it places that we decide, we don't have to go into any of these agreements, we're not forced to go into a master plan. We can set the terms and negotiate those things, right? So, is that true?
correct.
Yeah.
It's
So
a
just-
contract between the city and the developer. You can put whatever you want in.
It gives us flexibility on deciding where we want those to move to. It's not creating new densities. It's just moving density from less desirable locations to preferred locations.
But why can't you do that without having a master plan development?
Because we haven't allowed increase in densities in the other zones. We haven't allowed a mechanism right now for increase in densities. We don't wanna do that, right? We don't wanna say, this residential zone, that whatever, we don't wanna say, yeah, you can get all these extra bonus densities by this. We wanna kind of shut that down and use this as our mechanism to say, property by property, we're going to evaluate, not by zone broadly allow increased density.
So does this, what? This doesn't change the zoning that's in place.
No,
If somebody, wants to deviate, we can say no to it. But we can consider it and we can look at if there are beneficial aspects to the proposal to the city to achieve our general plan goals, then it just gives us that flexibility, I believe.
I guess maybe where I'm coming from is that I just felt like, and this is permanent word here right now, I just feel like master plan developments have been, the strong word have been abused up here in the valley for me. So it's making me feel leery about it. And it's making me leery looking forward because you don't know who's gonna be on your city council, your planning commission. And I just think there's room for future abuse. How's that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's terminology in here that could be fixed. There's a line item here, says base density calculation and tabulations and explanation of requested bonus density. We're not gonna use that term bonus density, right? We're not gonna allow that, so maybe that goes away, but, in its place could be transfer of development rights or something like that, right? So we're very clear that we're not just giving away higher densities for any condition, I don't know.
Anybody else have any feelings about it? Or the other one?
I think you have to allow density somewhere, and this gives you the flexibility of saying where you want to allow it.
So back to,
You're not gonna avoid density, I mean, that horse is out of the barn. So, I
See,
mean,
I don't agree with that. I think that you can. By some of the zoning that we are putting in place now. I think you're controlling your density. And if the goal is to maintain open space, a rural feel, and to still have it feel like the valley. I think you can put your foot down and say, we have enough density.
Well, we do, and this preserves the density, but it's saying if you have a large agricultural parcel, do we wanna see that cut up into 3 acres? Or do we wanna preserve that and allow that property owner to benefit by shifting those development rights to an area that is preferred by the city that they go, right? So again, it's not increasing.
Okay, I get what you're saying, but I guess part of what I'm looking at is that all of those zones that would allow that density, the 15 and the 20, are spoken for, or they're already built out. I don't know that they can increase any more than they are. Does that make sense? They really are, they're either built out or they're taken. They are built, yeah, but they are slated to be built.
so in order to accommodate the dense movement density, don't you need TDRs? Don't you need a formal TDR process?
Well, something, whether it's called that or.
And so shouldn't that tie into this?
But that, we're kind of a cart before the horse then, right, because there is no TDR program.
Right.
So maybe we do need to put this aside until the city can adopt a TDR program so that we have way to implement it, probably
Yeah, I agree.
a approach.
There's a whole table on bonus densities in there.
Yeah, that has to go away. Too. Yeah, on page
H8.
7 and 8, so all that about bonus density should just go away. And replace it with TDRs, right?
I guess if you're TDR,
Right.
it's kind of like,
Right, well, we have to develop that ordinance, so maybe you're right.
If you're looking at a no net increase in density throughout the valley, then yeah, that density has to, those building credits have to come from somewhere else, so a TDR or similar.
If it wasn't
True.
would it just be the same thing, called something?
Yeah.
Maybe we just have to change.
But everybody's traumatized by the acronym right now. Yeah.
What are we not understanding about this, Brian? Just this, in general, master plan overlay? It's something I haven't had a chance to look into.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it really carefully either,
Yeah, it's,
and maybe that's why,
it does set,
Yeah.
it does set the bonus density standards, which, you know, can be removed, but other than that, it just kind of defines what needs to be included in a master development agreement. And
I want
how-
to look at this.
how the city would be managing applications for new development agreements and
In a way, is this not a zone in and of itself, we can just be applying wherever
It
the
feels like
planning
it's
commission, city council decides? Yeah, whoever, I don't know who makes that decision, but.
yeah, it is I mean, these are legislative actions, they're contracts entered into between a property owner and the city.
Okay.
This overlay zone creates a mechanism to track them visually, you know, on a map. And
But is it just, cause at first, is it just the tracking the map, or is it actually creating this, is this the framework for how these things operate?
Yeah.
it's both.
Okay.
I mean, you can take the mapping element out, you don't need to have an overlay zone
Yeah,
to show where you intend to do master development agreements. You can just have the agreement process and requirements laid out in a separate chapter.
And that's sort of thing too, like we were saying, do we want individual grading lots, right? I'm thinking of that, just a sec, so I look at that and I think, is this even a necessity? Because let's say that I have, 12 acres and I want to divide it into 3 different lots. I don't need to come to the city and ask for a master plan development, I'm just gonna maintain my 3 acre lots. I just go in and I do cluster subdivision, right? The only reason I would need this is if I want to take my zone and increase the density in it, right?
yes, but the upside of something like this, from an agricultural standpoint, so everyone wants to keep the farms, right? Well, how do you keep the farms? Well, the only way to do that is to have those development rights go somewhere else, so you can keep open space, open acres. And then those have to be built somewhere, and it has to be built somewhere that allows them. So,
Or can be allowed.
But
yeah,
that's what I'm saying, that will allow that, but I'm gonna go back to what I said before, all those areas that would allow that are spoken for.
but don't,
But they're
Unless
already
you're gonna
zoned.
create more, I know, but why do you wanna do that?
I don't think that they, so if it's already, if they already have, say, you can put. Whatever, one building unit on every quarter acre. This would allow them to put it in condominiums or something much more tight in that area. Using the development rights from someone.
I know, do you want that, is that what you want?
That's not new development rights, that's just the shift.
I know, but still, that shift creates more density,
In a specific spot, yes, but
Yeah.
the valley as a whole, no.
yeah.
I think this is a useful ordinance that we will need at some point in time, but I do think it's premature without having an implementation of transfer development rights in place first. Would you agree? Like, how could we apply this if we don't have those in place?
Well, the density bonuses
But we're not, if we exclude those, there's no mechanism.
requiring TDRs. I mean, density bonuses could be offered without TDRs in exchange for certain things like protecting wildlife habitat, providing access to public lands across the property, or providing housing affordability, or, certain levels of affordable housing. Um. The. The master plan development gives the city the ability to negotiate for certain needs or certain desires within a designated project area that are not TDR related. It can relate to commercial space or other public spaces like parks or public buildings, things like that. There are a number of different things that can be negotiated out of it in exchange for.
This doesn't talk about how existing master plan development agreements are going to be administered. So if this, because the question is, does this need to be adopted for the moratorium to be lifted? At some point. Or can those agreements persist as agreements?
Well, they already do
Without, I'm saying without, if we don't adopt this, a new ordinance at this time until we gather more information, say. Would it mess with the continuance of those prior master plan development?
No.
Administrative.
No, it would.
So this is something that's not required for lifting the moratorium.
So Brian, the examples you just gave about not having needing TDRs. Those examples don't do anything about density. So is it my understanding that to impact density, that there needs to be a TDR process in place?
I mean, that seems to be the desired goal for the community, is to create no net increase in the buildable number of homes or units within the valley. Then yes, some sort of TDR or similar exchange is going to be necessary to move development from one area to another.
So do we,
I mean, we could reference an adopted TDR program, and if it's not adopted yet, it's not implemented, but when it is, it triggers it or something like that.
Yeah.
How do we? Or again, we just maybe put this aside until that time.
so with, I know that people have been submitting through the council. Do you foresee anything in July, August, September impacting densities? Where, to I guess to Angela's question, if we set this aside or put a reference to a future established TDR type program.
I mean, if there is no TDR program set up, there won't be any. There can't be any new transactions. I am anticipating new subdivision applications. I have not heard of anybody interested in entering into a new master development agreement with the city, so I don't know what the level of demand is for this once the moratorium is lifted. I guess I'll need to double check with Corbin just to see how necessary this is. I know the city council has questions about this. The mayor is concerned that it does need to be in place.
I would think then if there's no tool to implement it, it'd be pointless to adopt.
And I might be showing my ignorance here, but my understanding is that the existing master plan developments that are in place are out of our control. They were, so with that information, does that change whether this, how important this is to be moved forward? It doesn't affect them.
No, it doesn't. It would be.
This is future.
Correct.
Okay, I would like to then set this aside, and come back to it with further discussion about how the timing and when to implement and what data we need to make that decision, if that's good with everyone.
Yeah, maybe get more information, Brian.
So with our remaining time, I think it would be beneficial to go back to our discussion of conditional uses, since those do apply across several zones. And I think there were a couple of sticking points on that.
We need to legal counsel.
Let's see, that was or conditional uses, 108-4.
You wanna go back?
Oops. Where did we get, what did we agree on, where did we get stuck?
Well, I've got to know that we needed legal counsel to answer some questions before we could move
Which
forward.
were, which questions, let's be
I don't know.
specific on that.
Um,
I got too many. There was, oh, I know what it was about. It was about, do we require public notice? Do we
Oh, yeah.
require
Yeah.
public notice? I'm kind of with you, Tyson, I think on that will be noticed in our general meeting notices. I do really want there to be emphasis on encouraging public input. I'm not sure if that's done legally or just in practice, but if there's a way to have it both ways there, where you put a general notice, but then encourage or require open to options, but I think neighbors do know a whole lot about their areas and could provide valuable information, not just clamor.
But it also sounds like we can already accommodate public comment just through out the outline of
Comment, yes,
the meeting.
the hearing would have special notice and cards and like
Right.
we've seen in comment. This can be addressed in the
Well,
agenda.
so then doesn't that solve the problem with meeting or?
I'm open to that, how do you
Say that again.
just not put strict requirements on noticing or hearings, but just public comment.
It is, like,
Encouraged or required, it's whatever we feel. that-
Encouraged maybe?
I could vote in favor of that. I would leave personally, if I were doing, I would put that in there, I would just leave it open,
Just leave it
but
open, okay.
that won't stop me from voting to move this forward.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not binding, then we don't need to, I suppose. And then I have a question about simplified application process that we started to address, and I'm not sure we finished that conversation. Page 4.
Is this the one that Kathy had to restore?
Oh, yeah, good job. It's there.
Thank you. I'm not touching anything.
Have to be bounced.
We have designated touchers.
Does it?
Everyone's got her backs.
It's all I'm saying is a simplified site plan, so it's instead of like acting like it needs to have a very detailed. Where everything's going at, or some engineered or architecture,
It could be hand
it
drawn.
could be a hand-drawn thing, is essentially. And that's specifically what it says down below, is hand-drawn or scale area or exhibits may be accepted where sufficient to demonstrate compliance. Because in my opinion, I mean, a large development or something that's using conditional use is gonna have much higher needs for detail than somebody who's doing a small
civil, a small conditional use on the property.
Well, could you, specify that for the simplicity?
Let's say a farmer wants to have a pumpkin patch and have people, there's a conditional use to have a U-pick on their property, which I think actually aren't a pumpkin patches, so. We made them a permitted use.
No, I'm not saying that, I'm saying within the writing, couldn't we just specify that if it was a,
Yeah, I'm looking at the submittal requirements, and so there's.
the type of conditional use?
Vicinity
might-
map, name of the project, North Arrow, property boundaries. I'm just looking at which of these items we would want to exclude.
Okay, do you want to original?
It starts on page 2, under application and review procedure. It lists, what needs to be on the site plan.
Names, and site addresses, of adjacent property owners.
I just wanna make sure that planning has the tools they need to evaluate compliance.
Mhm.
Scale, which will be sized appropriately to make the site plan visibly clear, legible, and.
See, so looking at your example with pumpkin patch, some of this stuff is just like.
Just wouldn't
I
apply.
don't even need it.
But it would, if it doesn't apply, it would. You're not doing any.
It says add minimum of the following information. So your pumpkin patch is gonna have to go through a lot.
Yeah. What's everyone else's take on this? Angela's expressed my feelings, you want to express my feelings? We are on page 4, going to 5.
I'm good with what you're proposing, but I wonder if there's a way that we can. Make it more clear that it only applies to the pumpkin patch type thing, you know what I'm saying?
We could just do agriculture and agritourism and remove the small scale conditional uses.
Oh, okay, there it is.
But that could be like someone who does, cause I think on some of the zones, if someone's just watching neighbors' kids, that's fine, but if they're doing a daycare on their property and
Yeah.
then suddenly that individual needs to do all that stuff as well. Or, I don't know, what other conditional uses you guys think are.
Recreation lodge came up in the Forest Valley zone.
Or you could simply say that, I don't know, maybe this is tricky, but the planning, the city planner has the discretion to waive some requirements.
Well, so I'm looking at, maybe because I do this every day, but when I look at the site plan requirements, those to me could be sketched out, and those to me are pretty. Straightforward, and then when it gets down to starting with culinary water, it's only as applicable. And then below that, applicable impact studies and other pertinent.
Okay.
That's when it gets complicated, so that's, if it's not applicable, then
You don't have to
you're
give it
not
up.
putting it septic, but if you are, then.
Difficult.
Aaron, what are your thoughts?
I'm good either way.
It already says culinary water and sanitary sewer septic verification as may be applicable for the specific
Okay.
use.
I think maybe we're covered for
Thanks, Trey. You want?
I'm sorry. I love the spirit of it, but I think it's covered.
Okay.
Same.
I don't disagree enough of that, so you're.
That's all I have, anybody,
Mm-mm.
okay, does anybody wanna, motion on this?
I'll do it. Commissioner Schaefer makes a motion to move forward chapter 108-4 conditional uses for public comment.
I'll second. Commissioner Morganson.
Alright, motion by Commissioner Schaefer, second by Commissioner Morgan, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously, and with that, we motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Schaefer makes,
Well, everybody's precious.
Commissioner Schaefer makes a motion to adjourn.
I second, those in favor?
Bye.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Well, I got it.